will be time. We're going to do this 30-minute interview with our fabulous authors. And then afterwards, guys, we'll have time for any sort of follow-up questions that you've got. Let me go ahead and add myself. I'm not just a voice, I'm actually a person.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. It's good to see both of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know it's the eve of Thanksgiving. I'm sure you're both dealing with stuff, or is this a nice respite away from your families for an hour?
Yes, that one.
Well, actually, I'm very curious. It's a question I have later, but I'm so interested. Do you have any fun traditions that you do for Thanksgiving? Natalie, I'll start with you, and then I'll get Elizabeth after that.
The one that always comes to mind is I always wake up and watch the Thanksgiving Day parade. I've not missed a single year. And a few years ago, we lived in Washington, D.C., and my husband, for my birthday, which is in November, we did a trip up to New York City and we got to watch it live in person. And we like nearly froze we were frozen by the time we were done, but it was one of the most amazing experiences. So that's my tradition. I will do it tomorrow too.
Yep, that's perfect. What about you, Elizabeth?
Just I think the same tradition that so many people do, and that is just cooking the turkey. And I have like a million casseroles to do. And I have 3 different sets of china: my grandmother's china, and my mother's china. And so I always gravitate to my grandmother's for some reason. So I can't get rid of mine. I can't get rid of my mom's. So I'm keeping them all, but we just moved recently in September, and the china is all still in boxes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But as long as I get the one set out, and get that on the table. So, and pumpkin pie, of course. I mean, pumpkin pie.
I love that. Well, like I said, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. To get us started, we're kind of just talking the first little portion of our chat is going to be all about romantic suspense and mystery. And so I was curious for you guys, if you could, and then we'll start with you, Natalie, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing.
Sure. So I feel like I don't have to introduce myself. I'm Natalie. I wrote the Harbored Secret series, which was my first series, and I just released the first book in my new series, the Snap Agency series. Been writing since 2010. Was signed to a contract in 2018, I think. So it's been a short time since then, but a long time since writing. I've been married for 25 years this year to my husband, who is in the military. We have 3 adult children. I have 1 son-in-law and 1 future son-in-law that will have a wedding this time next year, actually. So that's exciting. That's pretty much, I feel like that's pretty much it. I feel like there should be more, but I don't know if there's really much more.
Had you always been like a lifelong writer?
No, actually, I've always been a lifelong reader. So I've loved reading books since I was a little girl. It wasn't until 2010, I think my children were middle school and like late elementary school, that I kind of had this free time. And I had just happened to stumble on Christian fiction. I didn't know it existed, and literally found a book on a plane that was a Christian fiction author, Mindy Starnes Clark. Read it and was like, wow, this is great. This is like a great story that's clean fiction. And I just kind of was like, maybe I could write a story. And so I ended up signing up for a writing course with the Christian Writers Guild. It doesn't exist any longer, but it was with Jerry Jenkins. And Diane Mills was my mentor. And so she walked me through my first manuscript pretty much. And I feel like then I can say like the rest is history, or like the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. So, and that's pretty much how it started.
That's awesome. What about you, Elizabeth?
What was the question again?
Oh, sorry. The question was, that's a refresher. Thank you. The question was, how did you get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Seems like it makes sense. I have 4 children and they're all grown except my youngest is 18. So yes, he's grown, but, and I've moved quite a bit and traveled a lot with my job. I have always wanted to be a writer, but it wasn't until I stayed home with my first child, and that was in 2001, that I decided to really pursue it. And so, like Natalie, it was a few years before I actually really got published. And I attended my first conference in 2001, and it was ACFW. And at the time, it was American Christian romance writers. And I believe that Diane Mills actually started that organization too. She's just everywhere.
Yeah.
So
she's like finding the little baby writers.
Yeah. And so, I just, got into a critique group and just worked really hard. And it wasn't until 2006 that I landed my first contract. And so I wrote for a few years for Heartsong Presents and Barber Publishing. And then in 2011, I started writing for Love Inspired Suspense. So I have written, 30 something books for just Love Inspired Suspense, which is romantic suspense. And but I always dreamed of writing trade, which is the much longer novels. And so it was 2017 that I finally signed with Revell, and it was my dream publisher. So it's been an exciting 20 years.
Wow.
Yes, I always wanted to, there's just always that writing inside of me. And in school, I'd write stories or whatever, but it's just, back then, there was no internet to tell you, hey, you can be a writer.
That's true.
Or to open the doors. It provided so many more opportunities, in classes and ways to learn and to connect. So it's been a fun journey.
That's so cool. And so, Elizabeth, it sounds like for you, a romantic suspense has always been your genre. Yeah. Go.
Well, I started actually trying to write historical.
Okay.
But I just didn't get anywhere with that. And I wrote, my first thing that I sold was a contemporary romance, but within that romance, there were many elements of suspense and mystery. So that's, you start writing and you kind of find your niche. And so it kind of developed that way. So I love romantic suspense.
And then for Natalie, for you, because like both of you having that romantic suspense element to it, was that what inspired you to do that? Was it just that was sort of the stories that you found your voice was lended better for, or was it just like you were so excited about the action involved with romantic suspense? And I'll start with you, Elizabeth, and then go to Natalie.
Actually, it's a little bit of both. As I mentioned, I tried to write historical, but I entered contests and I didn't really get anywhere. And then over time, I've learned that my voice really fits well with romantic suspense. And I love the genre. Even when I was writing historicals, I would put suspense in there. So it just comes naturally to me. And then my voice works much better that way. So here we are.
I love that. And Natalie?
So I think for me, I've always loved reading, romantic suspense or political thrillers. And my very first manuscript was more of a political thriller. And Diane was like, you've got to add some romance. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
So I had to read a book on how to add romance to my stories. And I was like, I'm not sure how to do that. So, which is, to me, silly, because I love watching like Hallmark and all the like ooey gooey romance stuff, and I love reading contemporary romance. So it was just weird to figure out how to write that in a way that felt authentic to who I was. So but I've always liked the adventure of writing a suspense, and then I've always liked heartfelt romance. I like the buddingness, when relationships begin, and that sort of tension of banter between characters. I'm a huge fan of like humor, romantic humor. So I love adding that into my stories, but it kind of just, and it works out with my husband being in the military, and I've got, law enforcement in my family's background. So I kind of have like these little pulls that I can draw from for story ideas and research stuff. So it's worked out really well for me so far.
I love that. It's awesome. Can you guys read the genre while you're writing it? Are you able to read romantic suspense while writing?
I can. What about you, Natalie?
I think so too. Yeah. I try not to, just because sometimes I feel like I think for me, I don't know how this is for Beth, but I think for me, sometimes I get self-critical because I'll read something and I'll be like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And mine in those stages does not look good at all. Like it looks like I'm always telling my editor, I'm so sorry, you have to read this. It's so bad. And she's like, don't worry, it's fine. But I'm always like so self-critical about it. So I try to monitor what romantic suspense stories I'm reading at that time. But I do like to read other genres so that I can kind of see and pick up things. I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's a good, like, I like the way that makes me feel. And then I can kind of figure out how to weave that into my own stories. But it's kind of a balancing act. I don't know if that's the same with Beth. She's done more than me. So I always feel like I'm learning.
I'm with you. I read all over the board. And so, but I also, that happens to me too. I'm reading a romantic suspense and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And I mean, there's been times I'm like, I have to rewrite my beginning. And so I do, and it changes the story. So, I mean, I think it's just all part of the process. And, you know, we have to protect ourselves from, you know, things that will kind of get us off our game, that kind of thing. But a lot of times I think too, Natalie, I'm sure this is you, we have to read it for endorsement within our genre. So, and you're writing your book, you got to read, I just finished reading your Fatal Code. It was fantastic. I'm like,
oh, thanks.
Oh my gosh. You know, oh, that's great. So, I mean, we have to do that, but I love to read. I just finished reading a time travel or story by David James Warren. I don't know if you've read her, that, but they're very good, just completely different, but you know, it just gives you new ideas. I love to read speculative fantasy, you know, inspirational Christian romance and all over the place. So, but I definitely love romantic suspense. So I won't stay away from that for too long.
Like it always pulls you right back in.
Oh, yes.
Well, Natalie, as you mentioned, you're writing CIA spies and government operatives right now. And while Elizabeth, you have criminal psychologists and profilers, just to name a few for both of you. What excites you about those worlds, government, small town murders, and how do you research your characters' jobs?
I'll let you answer, Beth. Go first.
I was telling you to go first. I think about this. Well, I first of all, I get very excited about setting, and setting is a huge part of my books.
Yeah.
I can create danger in a beautiful setting, you know, a scary mountain road, you know, you're looking down. I can think of all kinds of things. So it kind of, I guess you could say it's also man against nature in my stories. As far as researching the characters, is that what you're asking? How to research
their jobs? Yeah.
Yeah. I just look for things that intrigue me or I find fascinating. And in that I feel like, okay, well, my readers probably will be interested too. And then like in the case of Erin Larson, she's a criminal psychologist. I had to really explore that whole world to find out what all can you do in this world and why would she become that, and just really start layering her character and building that into the whole the story as a whole. So I think it's just the characters and the plot and the setting, it all has to tie together. And I'm sure you agree, Natalie, so it's your turn.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I know the question has to do with me about research and then what we find, why we write what we write. Is that right?
Yeah. And like for you, because you have like the political thriller element with yours and the CIA spies and government operatives and stuff. So it's like very different. I mean, I know your husband's in the military, but it's like very different from your day-to-day life. So I'm just curious, like, what got you and how you research your characters' jobs.
So
very long way of asking.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like a lot of times my story comes or like the starts of my story come from somebody I know, somebody we've met. So it happened that a few years ago, we ended up meeting somebody who he was a CIA. And so I was just like, okay, I think one day I'm going to write a story about, you know, somebody in the CIA. And then I had this person who I can kind of consult with and talk to. And he shared a couple of stories that is actually, I was able to use one of his stories in one of my characters did what he did, you know, in his previous career. Cool. And so that helps. And even, you know, because I think, you know, even though we're military, our lives have been touched by lots of areas where there's agencies. And so I've been able to kind of pull from that. And that has helped me create plots and create storylines that I can okay, I know how to do this. So it was really hard for me with Beth when she was commenting about Fatal Code. That was probably the story that made me cry the most because it stretched me so much. Like I was doing like aerospace engineers and I was doing like like, nuclear stuff from, 50 years ago and like all this science stuff, which I hate science. And I was just like, I don't know. It stretched me so much because the research, I had to be so meticulous about it, making sure that I had it, correct. But my husband told me after I was done with that one, he's like, next time write something that you know. I was like, okay, I will. I was awful. It was a pretty bad, but
that's so funny. So, and then the next book in the series, is it a less research intensive role for the main character?
For the book 2?
For the next one.
Fatal Code. No, that one was a lot. And then this one that's coming up, because I have 3 books in that series. I'm writing the 3rd book now. This one is not as intense because it has to do with an explosive ordnance disposal officer who does bombs and weapons.
I don't know, it sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it sounds intense. It's a big title, So that one actually worked out well because my husband's in EOD, and we've met EOD officers. So that one should be fun to write because I get to do bombs. So
ooh, yep.
And you have bomb friends, so you don't.
Bomb friends. All right, the bomb.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So you kind of said a few of them, but I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite romantic suspense stories in pop culture? And that could be movies, books, current or old ones that you love from the past. We'll start with Elizabeth. I'll go with Natalie. I'll start with Natalie.
I have to have time to think. So movies
time, yes.
and so you want to start with movies? What did you say? Movies and
it's whichever, movies, books, TV shows, which you don't have to do all of them. You can
okay, all right.
The highlights for yourself.
I like to watch so many things. I live with a bunch of guys, and so there's a lot of action and adventure movies, and you might even get that sense in my books. Like, where is all this coming from? Well, it's coming from all of the movies that I watch with my people. I like to watch. I'm watching right now. We're watching that series called Foundation, which is on Apple TV, and it's a sci-fi series, and I like a lot of sci-fi series. And The Wheel of Time or something that just came out on Amazon Prime. Those are just some, and then I'm waiting on the third episode of Lost in Space, and I just watched Dune about 4 times before it went off of HBO Max. So I really love to push it out there and watch all of that.
Cool.
And like I did just finish reading Fatal Code, and I mentioned the time travel story. My Kindle is so full of things. I don't know if you do this, Natalie, but I'm just like, okay, which one am I going to start now? And you just kind of read a little bit. So I have so many things that I love to read. I'm trying to think. I didn't have time to come up with a big long list for you, but I'm constantly reading. And I'm going to be reading Susan Sleeman and Lisa Harris. I love all of the romantic suspense authors in the Christian fiction genre, all of us. And we're pretty tight and close friends. I mean, we kind of all know each other. So
close community.
And that is all I can think of off the top of my head.
That's great. Thank you. That's awesome. Natalie, what about you?
I was trying to look on my phone sneaky to see, because I just watched a show. I know, but I couldn't even pull it up. I watched a show just recently on Netflix. That was really good. It was like the prequel. I think it was Army of.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that? Like, I think the first one's Army of the Dead, and it's like a zombie one.
Yes.
And then they did like a pre-one, which is like Army of Thieves, I think. And that was really good. I really enjoyed that one.
I saw that.
It didn't have as many zombies in it, which at first I was really kind of glad for that. But the zombies, the second one or the first one was interesting.
I feel so better. I'm so much better now to hear that you watched it.
I know. Sometimes I'm always like, do I admit that I watched this or do I not? I don't know.
Absolutely. This is a safe space. You can always admit.
Yes. So, and then I watched, there's another one on, I think it's on Netflix called Lupin. That one was really good. Knives Out, I like. I'm trying to think of all the ones that are kind of like this. They're more, I guess, mystery, suspense.
Yeah.
There's, I like the Jason Bourne series. I like any kind of series that has like a cast of characters, a team. I always like that kind of thing, which always makes me think of James Hannibal. He writes great team. His first couple of books were great teams. I got to endorse his book. So while I was working on mine, I got to read Elysium Tide,
cool.
which was based in Maui, and that one will come out. But that one was a lot of fun to read also. So, but I like, like Lynette Eason, Lynn Blackburn, they all do really great jobs with like team and like that, that setting. Beth's books, like it's just fun to be able to read them and kind of be like, I always think it's great when I read a book, if I know the author and I can't hear them when I'm reading, because then I feel like I've slipped into like, to me, that's always a great sign. Like I've slipped into their story world. Cause sometimes I can kind of pick up like, oh, okay, I can kind of see, like my friend, I'm like, oh, I can see like, your voice in it. But I always think it's really great when I kind of can't, cause then I'm like, oh, I'm really in the story now.
Yeah. I love that so much. That's so true. All right. So this is a kind of a twisted question, but Natalie, Beth, I want you guys to think about where you would bury or be the best place to bury a body.
The best place to bury a body? Okay, because I already know how I would bury the body.
Okay, perfect. I want to know both those things then. The best place to bury it and how you would bury it.
Best place to bury it. Oh. God. So I will say that my brother-in-law, I'm going to my sister's house for Thanksgiving. I'm going to be driving out tonight actually. But he has this book and it's like a survival book, and I think I'm going to steal it. I'm telling y'all right now that I'm going to steal this book from them because it has all these like really strange things in there. And one of the things is how to bury a body so that you can't like get caught or so that you can't be found. And what it describes is that most people bury a body like horizontally, which, I mean, because it's just easier. You bury it and you dig the hole and bury it. But it said that the best way to do it is to actually dig a vertical hole and put the person head side down, so their feet are up, so that all of the like bodily fluids and stuff sink to the bottom. And then it's harder for like dogs or whatever to sniff because it's deeper down as opposed to like a full body. So that's how I would bury my victim. Where I would bury them, probably, gosh, I think it would have to be someplace that like has a good erosion. Like not a lot of people, a lot of people would visit, but like, a lot of good erosion and turnover. So the earth would be real saturated with some sort of, I don't know, whatever that is, whatever the sciencey term is for that. I didn't pay attention to that part in science.
I like it though.
Science.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. That's a great tip. All right. What about you, Beth?
Well, I think if the goal is to disappear the body, you're asking if you're going to bury the body. I really think, I would never do this in my books because I don't do gory things, but is to really put it in a bathtub and pour acid over it. I don't know.
Make a nice slurry of it.
I mean, the grossest thing I've ever thought of would be that, but or crematorium, turning the body to ash. As if I'm left with getting rid of a body and I can't burn it or acid it away, taking it out to the deep, darkest part of the ocean and putting weights on it and just letting it go down, and where nobody could ever find it. So I don't know. Those were the things that I thought of. I had a little bit of time to think this time because there were stuff.
I did. We were in New York walking through Central Park. And I don't know if anybody's ever walked through Central Park, but it's so big and people kind of just, New Yorkers just ignore you. Like they don't really get in your business. And so I was thinking like this is terrible. I don't know if Beth is like this, but I'm always thinking of like, that'd be a good place to like bury somebody, or this would be a good way to get it. Like I'm pretty morbid in that mindset. My kids will tell you like they hate because I'll be like, oh, this is how you're going to die. If you go out tonight, this is how it's going to happen. And they're like, Mom, but it's just, it's the way I think.
Suspense writers. Yeah. That we all,
the active imagination.
Right. It's terrible. But we were walking through and I saw this couple carrying their luggage through Central Park to go to, I guess, their hotel or their Airbnb or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's the perfect way to dispose of a body. You just take it through your suitcase and you dump it in Central Park, and no one would be the wiser because no one would look twice at you because everybody else is doing it. So
exactly.
Next time anybody walks through Central Park and you see a suitcase, you'll have to wonder, is there a body in there?
Yeah.
That reminds me of, we were talking about, I was with my son on a trip and we were talking, I was coming up with ideas on how to kill someone, and we were on an elevator and he started, doing the thing, saying blah, 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 blah. And I said, And so I was just standing there, I said, not here. And so that just added, made it so much worse. So when the elevator opened, there was one lady on it. She just like, I mean, she stepped off and you could tell
ran.
she was freaked out. She was totally freaked out. Anyway, so my son's, thinking about stuff now. I've got him thinking, and he gets on the elevator at his school and he says, wow, this would be a great place to have a bomb. Well, guess what? The police came and got him the next day.
Oh no.
And then they were just, they figured out, oh, you just were stupid. You should have said, oh my goodness, you have to be careful.
Yes, definitely.
Exactly. It's like, I don't have the manifesto. I'm just having thoughts. Just thoughts.
Right. I'm just my mom's a writer.
Yes. I don't know if you do this, Beth, but I literally was texting my brother about a bomb that I needed to attach to a vehicle. And my brother knows a lot about vehicles and he was in the Army. And so I was like, what can I do to attach this bomb? And like, I hesitated to send him this text message because I feel like everything is monitored now, especially like what I write. I feel like I'm definitely under like federal surveillance. So I was like, I sent him the text. I was writing the text message and I said, I need to know how to put a bomb on a vehicle where someone couldn't find it, especially if it was like outside of an embassy. And so and in parentheses, I said, I'm writing this because I'm a fictional writer and I need to know for research. I put that in the text message because I was so worried even if someone picked up his phone, they would be like, yeah, we're bringing you in.
Mm-hmm. We have questions.
A great story with you telling me that,
Oh my, it's terrible. You do get, I do think suspense writers get a little bit of paranoia on like what they're asking, or especially like in their computer history file. Like if you were to look, it's like, okay, how much bombs, where's the location of this embassy? What is the street? Who is there? And it's like, if somebody was to like put all those pieces together, they would definitely call us in for questioning.
They're like, serial killer or writer?
Right. One or two.
All right. Well, ladies, before I turn this over to our readers for any follow-up questions that they might have, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you? Natalie, I'll go to you first.
You can find, I have a website, www.nataliewalterswriter.com, which has links to my social media pages, plus a newsletter sign up, which is always where there's like first news, exclusive news, street team, launch team stuff. But I love connecting on social media. It's one of, I don't always necessarily like posting, but I love connecting. So I love chatting with readers there. And, I'm always usually available I'm responding to messages and stuff. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but Instagram and Facebook tend to be where I spend most of my time.
Awesome. Great. And you, Beth?
ElizabethGoddard.com is my website, and you can find all my media contacts there, my social media contacts, and like Natalie, the newsletter, subscribe to that because I send out information every single month about deals and new books coming out. I do have a Facebook readers group that it's a private group that you join, but I go to them like all the time, and like today they're helping me pick out a name for a town on the book that I'm working. So it's just a lot of fun interaction.
Hey, mine too. So. I was picking, they were naming a horse today for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So see, we have a lot of fun.
There we go.
That's so cool. Your future readers can all have a chance to get their names in the book, which would be so cool.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, guys, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and end my recording, and I'll turn this over